Well, welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video. I wanted to briefly discuss a movie that I stumbled across accidentally. My wife found it and put it onto the queue in Tubi. The movie is called Jules. It's a sci-fi movie with an interesting, it's something we've seen before, but what the point of this video essay is that Jules undoes the damage of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now, why do I say that? It's a really good sci-fi movie with an interesting premise that we've seen before, but it does it really well. Now, it stars Ben Kingsley, Harriet Sansom Harris, who looks familiar. I'm not sure where I've seen her before, but she's very good. And Jane Curtin, who I've always loved since the Saturday Night Live days. Ben Kingsley is our main character, and he is a fellow of advanced years. He's living alone, but his daughter comes and checks on him regularly and all that kind of stuff. But the premise of the movie involves this little character here. This is Jules. This is literally an alien that crashes in Ben Kingsley's backyard. So when I was describing this movie to people I know, like my brother, I was saying it's essentially E.T., the extraterrestrial, but with senior citizens. And my brother said, "Oh, you mean like Cocoon?" I was like, well, no. This one's like literally a UFO crashes in Ben Kingsley's backyard. And the alien has crawled out and is just lying on Ben Kingsley's backyard, reaches up for help, and Ben Kingsley's like, okay, I don't know what to do. He tries to tell people an alien has crashed in my backyard, but because he's a man of advanced years, nobody believes him, including his daughter. They're like, I think you need to go and see the memory doctor, that kind of thing. So he decides, well, the heck with it. I'm bringing this little fellow aboard into my house, and I'm going to give him whatever food he likes. It's very touching. Now, again, this is old territory we've seen before. Again, it's E.T. the extraterrestrial, fish out of water in my home. It's an alien. How do I deal with that? But what makes this one interesting, now maybe it's because I'm a fellow of advanced years and I can kind of see patterns of where my life is going. I sympathized with Ben Kingsley in a weird way with this movie. Like, he is a crotchety old man who is going to, like, the town hall to discuss things, naming conventions. Like, I want to put a recommendation forward for the naming of the town. He's a very kind of set in his ways old man. And what I found really compelling was there were several scenes that really touched me in a way that I hadn't really expected. For example, there's one bit where his daughter has like laid out all of his bills on the kitchen table and said, right, you're going to have to make sure that these all get paid and all that kind of stuff. And I just thought, yeah, this is an element we haven't really we haven't explored very often. I guess Cocoon did it to a degree of like, as you're getting to a certain stage in your life, you need to maybe think in terms of what the last days are going to look like for you. But this movie did it in a way that kind of reached me on a level I was really surprised about. Inevitably, as the antics proceed, the other two characters do show up. They discover you've got an alien living in your backyard. Yeah, I know. There's some very good bits. Jane Curtin does some really funny comedic bits. I really love her in this movie. And it made for an interesting tale, something that I hadn't really considered. I do recommend it strictly for the E.T. side of things. It is Harriet Harris's character who actually names this little fella Jules. Jay Curtin actually says he doesn't look like a Jules, he looks more like a Gary. It's really funny, but they nurse him back to health and he starts to repair his spaceship and he helps them with things in their lives. Again, we're talking E.T. the extraterrestrial, very like rote kind of following the similar path. But there are some bits toward the end that really struck me. For example, this bit. Now, I'm not going to spoil this because it is kind of central to what I found so appealing about this movie. But it resonates. This is like a gotcha moment of the plot. And it essentially, the cops are coming, so they manage to get away from the cops. And Jules is going to be heading back up into space, and he says goodbye to Ben Kingsley and the other characters. And it was at this moment that it suddenly struck me that this movie undoes the damage of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now, what do I mean by that? Surely Close Encounters is like a classic, a cornerstone science fiction film of the late 70s, and it is. It's an amazing movie. I love it so much. Yes. There were bits of the plot that really appealed to me. I was a young kid at the time. It made sense to me on such a deep level. But I know that with watching it with other members of my family, some people were kind of not thrilled with some of the way other family members were being portrayed. Watch the movie and just form your own opinion. But I thought it was interesting that at the end of the film, Richard Dreyfuss's character goes with the aliens up into space. Of course, we would love to do that. However, I was also aware of some interviews with Steven Spielberg about the making of, or the way Close Encounters ended up. He was apparently not too thrilled with it. Now, I don't mean in like a George Lucas way, oh, I wish I could have refilmed that, or I could redo the special effects of this, or whatever. No, he actually, I remember reading an article in a Starlog magazine or something like that, years after Close Encounters came out. Steven Spielberg said something that always stuck in my head, and I thought, that doesn't sit well with me. And that being that Spielberg had said, you know, if I had made that movie now, 10, 20 years later, I wouldn't have had Richard Dreyfuss's character leave with the aliens. Because as a parent, I would never abandon my kids, and that was a very selfish thing for me to write into that story for that movie. And I just thought, I understand that, and that is a noble, admirable quality as a parent. Yes, of course, that makes sense, but the whole point of the movie is Richard Dreyfuss going with the aliens. He's not fitting on this world, much like I'm sure Spielberg at that time felt as well. I'm this artistic person surrounded by my friends and family who don't get what it is that I'm trying to achieve. If only there was another world that would understand me, the world of cinema. And in the movie, Richard Dreyfuss lives that. He goes with the aliens up into space. That's the end of the film. That's great. Now, little side note that was always weird is a lot of audiences back in the late 70s were kind of annoyed with the first release of the film because it ends with him walking into the blinding light, and then the UFOs take off, and that's the end. And everybody felt this level of like dissatisfaction. Well, wait a minute, what did he see? What was inside the spaceship? I understand from an artistic point of view, no, he goes into the shining light, he goes into the glowing tunnel, and then we never see him again is kind of the thought process. And there was a decision to change that. In 1980, they released an extended version of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where I don't know if they had already filmed the special effects or if it was something added in post, but they did add some sequences showing Richard Dreyfuss actually inside the spaceship. And again, going off into the universe with the aliens. Now, when Spielberg said, oh, I would never have done that nowadays because I don't feel it makes sense as a parent, I don't want to abandon my children. And I just thought, that doesn't fit with the artistic vision of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I don't get where you're coming from with this, Stephen. Again, admirable quality in a parent. I'm not arguing that. But for the purpose of the film, what was the point then, is kind of my gripe. If you're showing Richard Dreyfuss going through all of these things and living in this world that doesn't understand him and he wants to, get away and be in another place, what was the point of having your character do all of these things and get the going off with the aliens if now you're thinking, that's a bit mean to children. I would not do that now as a parent. What was the point of the film then, Stephen? Which again brings me back to Jules. When I saw this film, the ending of this, I don't want to spoil it. It goes along a similar path to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Ben Kingsley could go with the alien. And there is this moment when I was watching the film where I was like, oh God, are we going to do that sappy Spielberg thing again? Oh no, I couldn't possibly leave the Earth. They didn't, and they did simultaneously in a way that at first I was a little bit like, no, I don't. But then Ben Kingsley says something. I'm not going to spoil it. But I just thought, a light went off in my head. I was just like, yeah, that's the correct answer. That's the right way to address. You get the chance to go with aliens up into space. What are you like? And in the case of Ben Kingsley's character, it's not like there's a lot keeping him here on Earth. Yes, he's got his daughter. She's losing her patience with him as he gets older and stuff. So there is this very thin thread keeping him on the Earth, and he addresses it perfectly. I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to spoil the ending, but I highly recommend you check out Jules. It's a really good film. It's available on Tubi, at least here in Canada. Now, I posted on the Reddit forum for Tubi. I said, oh, you got to check out Jules. It's E.T. the Extraterrestrial with senior citizens. And somebody in the U.S. was just like, I can't find it. Maybe it's region locked. Maybe it's not available in your version of Tubi. But if you have access to, maybe it's on Netflix in the U.S. I don't know. If you have any way to find Jules, I highly recommend it. It is a very good science fiction movie. It is a very good exploration of what it's like as we get on in years and our perspective changes on a lot of things. And of course, with a cast like this, I mean, Ben Kingsley never does anything bad. But also the other actors, really, really well done. Even little Jules Alien, very, very well done. Great story, beautifully acted, makes you think a lot about aging and science fiction tropes in general. And that ending nailed it for me in a way that I just thought, this is perfect. So I'm going to recommend, if you can find Jules somewhere, please check it out. It's very, very good. As I say, it undoes the damage of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I'm going to leave it there. So until next time, I'll see you down the rabbit hole.